Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, you take a look at the landscape of the ACC, and I think there are two clear teams that have kind of separated themselves from the pack, being the Miami Hurricanes, the Clemson Tigers. We've been very vocal that we kind of think this is going on within the ACC. Now, this is not necessarily a lock in Miami and Clemson to play for an ACC championship because both of these teams have plenty of tough games left on their schedule. Miami this weekend going on the road to Louisville. Clemson's going on the road to Virginia Tech in a couple of weeks. That being said, like you kind of look at the talent level, you look at how these two teams are playing, you look at the quarterback position and say, yeah, these are the best two teams in the ACC. Now the conversation is, Dill, who's better? Now we're going to go position group by position group, old school roster battle, offseason type of stuff, and just kind of talk about how these two teams stack up. And Dill, at the end of the episode, we might venture out and say, all right, what team right now do you think wins if they play next Saturday? Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, Clemson fans, Miami fans, let it fly in the comment section. Dill, I don't even think we agree on certain position groups. I think we might not agree in terms of who's the better team right now. So let it fly in the comment section. That is the beauty of the roster battle episodes. I really do think that we're going to see this football game at the end of November into December in the ACC championship. Fired up to get into it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, let's start at the quarterback position, where I think it's pretty clear who's the best quarterback right now. That's Cam Ward. I've been very vocal. I think Cam Ward is playing the best football at the quarterback position in the country. That being said, one of the most underrated quarterbacks in 2024 is Cade Klubnik at Clemson. Like, I think the national media saw him really struggle against Georgia, kind of wrote him off as just another five-star bust. Dill, you take a look at the last couple of weeks, this kid has clearly turned the corner, is starting to really be comfortable in this Clemson offense. How do you see these two quarterbacks stacking up against each other here?
And I agree with you, of course. I mean, Cam Ward is the better quarterback right now. I still think you need to see, frankly, more from Cade Klubnik because, again, you've seen him now cut up some teams, but those aren't the teams that I think they need him to be really, really dominant against. I mean, you look, he needs to play good when they play a Georgia, a Miami, those type of football teams, but I do think the emergence of some of his wide receivers is helping in a big way. You look at the way Brian Wesco is playing in TJ Moore. I mean, they're giving them many more avenues to attack teams. I think you're seeing them open the field up a little bit more. And that's really helped him play like just calmer and less fast. I mean, it felt like at times the game was so fast for him. He would just get out of the pocket too quickly, throw the ball too quickly. It was just, I think the game does feel like it slowed down.
I don't think there was a ton of trust that Cade Klubnik had within himself or the offense in 2023. Like you noted it best, the offensive line went through some injuries. It was really shaky last year. The wide receiver position was a disaster from a health standpoint. Like they just didn't have any outside of Jake Bringenstool at the tight end position and true freshman Tyler Brown. Like there weren't a ton of consistent, reliable pass catches in that offense. I think the one big storyline is that the surrounding cast is much better this year for him at Clemson. But you even look at his numbers and say 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 12 big time throws to only 4 turnover worthy plays, a 45% completion percentage, pushing the ball 20 yards down the field. He's taken strides in a lot of aspects of his game, but at the end of the day, you look at Cam Wardell. We just talked about a 45% completion percentage, 20 plus yards down the field. Very good metric. Dill, Cam Ward's sitting at 57%. That is higher than a lot of quarterbacks' pure completion percentage. That's what Cam Ward's doing 20 plus yards down the field. I think Cam Ward, outside of a few plays that just make you scratch your head a little bit, maybe trying to do a little too much. And that's much smaller of a percentage than what we saw from him in Washington State. He's clearly taken a step there. You got to go Cam Ward, but Cade Klubnik playing really, really good football. Wide receiver position. You mentioned Clemson significantly better at the wide receiver spot. And Dill is kind of going through these wide receiver rooms. I think it's very similar. Like you look at Antonio Williams, Xavier Restrepo. I think very comparable wide receivers. I lean Xavier Restrepo because I'm just an Xavier Restrepo truther. Like I'm banging the table for this kid going back to the offseason. Then you look at some of the boundary wide receivers and say Isaiah Horton stepping up in a big way, Sam Brown, Jacoby George. Then you look at TJ Moore, Brian Wesco. I think it's very similar, along with two really good tight ends, Elijah Royal and Jake Bringenstool. I'm going to lean Miami at the wide receiver position, because I think, one, the sample size is a little bit better, but they'll, again, Clemson, this wide receiver room continuing to improve, especially with the emergence of the true freshman guys like Brian Wesco and TJ Moore.
And frankly, what kicks it over the edge for me for Miami is they do have that tight end position playing the right way. And
Yeah.
I certainly think the wide receiver room position itself on Miami, I'd favor them. I mean, again, like, yeah, you're getting better play from Clemson, but it's not like that long ago that I saw some really inept play. So again, they certainly still need to put more out there. You've seen Jacoby George, Restrepo, those type of guys, like they've been ripping it up for a little while now. But I think the fact that Miami's finally got some tight end play that is starting to create a new avenue, if you will, for Miami to make plays. I think gives them the decided edge in that pass catch room.
What I love both about both of these wide receiver rooms, it's so balanced. Like, I think Antonio Williams and Xavier Estrepo are both like the wide receiver one, so to speak, the guys that can separate short, intermediate, beat man coverage very comfortably. Then you have on the boundary your guys who can work vertically, guys like Isaiah Horton and Jacoby George for Miami. You got guys like Brian Wesco and TJ Moore. Guys do it all. Like, you don't have just the same type of wide receiver in either of these wide receiver rooms. It's really diverse. I'm going to lean Miami. So we got Miami at the quarterback spot. We got Miami at the wide receiver spot. Dill, let's go into the running back spot. I'm going to start with the hot take. I think Phil Maffa right now, 6 weeks, 7 weeks through the 2024 season, is the best running back on the field. Now, what makes this conversation interesting is it's really been the Phil Maffa show. Like, you've seen some good things from guys like Jay Haynes, but the running back room for Clemson, I think you have the best running back. Again, right now, I think Damian Martinez, we haven't necessarily seen him get going yet, but you look at the depth that Miami has. Damian Martinez, Mark Fletcher, guys that you don't see in the 2 deep, guys like Jordan Lyle or Chris Johnson. The depth's better for Miami, but I think the best running back is Phil Maffa at Clemson. What running back room are you taking if these teams were squaring off on Saturday here?
I think I'm taking the Miami room as a whole, and partially because, frankly, I think Mark Fletcher might rival Phil Maffa a little closer than maybe we think. Because I'm looking at the way Damian Martinez is running. It's not bad, but I honestly think like Mark Fletcher should probably be their one at this point. He's been more explosive. I think he's been a little like just had more juice. I mean, hitting more of those plays. And Phil Maffa, I mean, he's been able to rattle off a ton of big plays. That's been super helpful for Clemson, along with the fact that he can keep that team on schedule and pick up hard yards and kind of grind it out as well. So Phil Maffa is definitely the most complete back on this football field if these two teams are squaring off. But I mean, Damian Martinez is not a scrub. He's not playing as good as I think I would have wanted him to play. But I think if you put Mark Fletcher in that number one spot and then let some of those guys fill in with some unique skill sets like Chris Johnson, what he can do for them, I kind of take Miami as a whole on the running back.
Yeah, no, and I understand that way of thinking. I think for Damian Martinez, like, look, there's a large sample size of Damian Martinez being one of the best running backs in the country. Like, there's no secret about that. What I think he's maybe struggling with, and I'm kind of with you, like, the juice hasn't necessarily been there with Damian Martinez. Oregon State ran a lot of outside zone. That was pretty much exclusively what they ran. You look at Miami, it's a lot of gap scheme, it's a lot of inside zone. So it's kind of a different run scheme than what he's used to running for the last 2 years at Oregon State. So maybe there's a little bit of an adjustment period going on for Damian Martinez. Depth's better at Miami. I would probably take Phil Maffa if we were playing today in terms of what running back do I want toting the rock 20 times? I think, Dill, we were on the Phil Maffa train going back to last year. Like, Will Shipley got a lot of the attention, got the sponsorships, got the NIL. Phil Maffa was a dog last year for Clemson, and he's been a dog this year as well. Going to the offensive line, I'm going to go Miami here. That being said, you look at Clemson, this offensive line is starting to turn it up. And I think the thing that stands out to me the most for Clemson is you look at this offensive line and say, these guys, and this depth chart's not necessarily right, not really sure why they got Colin Sadler starting, but regardless of that, you look at Clemson and say, this group has played so much football together over the last couple of years, and they're staying healthy. It's been a significantly improved group, but you look at Miami, and if I were to assume Jalen Rivers back kind of starting at left tackle, I'm probably taking Miami. But again, one of those position groups that I don't know is there's that as much of a gap as we might have thought there was going to be heading into 2024.
Yeah, I thought that gap was going to be kind of noticeable. And frankly, because I think you saw from Clemson, like, yeah, you saw certainly moments in 2023 of them looking good. Like, you go to that Notre Dame game, and then you go like the next week and see them play Georgia Tech, and it looked kind of out of sorts. It's, again, I think that unit's actually playing at a very high level. I think they're protecting the passer much better. I still go Miami because I look like the Stanford game gives me a little bit of cause to pause. I mean, they really
Yeah.
struggle with those edge rushers. In Miami now, they've had their moments too. Obviously, I'm kind of with you. Jalen Rivers makes a huge difference both in the run and the pass. So, and I think he's back in full health. I think that offensive line looks a lot different than it did against teams like Virginia Tech. But again, like I don't know that I'd probably want more, frankly, out of that unit from Miami.
You look at Miami and say the sack numbers, actually they're giving up more sacks in the percentage of dropbacks than Clemson. I'm not going to necessarily hold that against him because Cam Ward, he does hold the football a little bit longer than Cade Klubnik, and he tries to extend plays and make some plays. And there's been some sacks that Cam Ward has taken that probably not on the offensive line, probably a little bit more on Cam Ward trying to do too much, which is not me getting at Cam Ward. Like, I want him to keep trying to do a lot because he's one of the best players in all of college football, but it comes with the territory that you might take a little bit more sacks when you are playing with a quarterback like Cam Ward. I'm going to lean Miami very close. Going to the defensive line, Dale, I'm going to go Miami here. And this is going to be a hot take. I have a feeling you're going to argue with me. I like Miami's depth, specifically at the edge rusher position, more than I do from Clemson. Now you're getting Peter Woods back, kind of similar. Like, they both were playing without their best defensive lineman throughout the early parts of the season, right? Peter Woods was gone for Clemson. Ruben Bain just coming back for Miami. But you look at these numbers, Dill, they're sacking the quarterback 8.6% of the time. That's 18th best in the country. Tyler Barron, 15 quarterback hurries, a 17% win rate. Alston, 12 hurries, 12% win rate. Simeon Barrow really starting to turn it up on the inside. And then I look at Clemson and say, yeah, TJ Parker's been a dude. Peter Woods is clearly getting back into it. I probably like Clemson's interior defensive line from a depth standpoint better, but then I look at the edge rusher position and say, I want more from guys like Jaheim Lawson and AJ Hoffler, where you look at Miami and say Elijah Alston and Akeem Mesidor are your twos. I feel better about the depth of the Miami defensive line than I do Clemson's. I'm guessing you're going to argue with this. How are you feeling about the defensive line?
Oh, yeah. In the main thing is I think there is a quite decided advantage, frankly, on the inside for Clemson. I would take both Peyton Page and Demonte Capehart over anyone on Miami's interior
Oh,
defense. I think those two are absolute hammers. Demonte Capehart might be the most underrated defensive
yeah, he's
lineman in
good.
the country. I look at like what he does and how physical he is, and like him just exploding through offensive linemen with ease. It feels like quite consistently. But I think Peyton Page is playing some real good football. Again, I like Simeon Barrow, but I think you've seen him make good plays in the pass rush. I don't know that he is as complete of a player as either of those guys. So again, that's right. Look, I look at this Clemson team. I don't think they're giving up that much in the edge room. Certainly a little bit of depth, but I mean, Peter Woods, TJ Parker, you don't find a better starting two in all of college football. So yeah, maybe the depth's not as great, but I think again, you look, Trey Williams is playing good ball. They kind of got a 3-man rotation, which I don't love. Vic Burley, want to see more from him for sure,
Yeah.
but I think as a whole, I would still probably take Clemson, mainly because I think the starting four is like quite a bit better.
Ooh, you said you can't find a better edge rusher duo than TJ Parker and Peter Woods. Still, you might be looking at one with Ruben Bain and Tyler Barron. At
Ruben
least in
Bain,
my opinion.
and I would accept the argument that he hasn't played, so I don't like know that we feel the full brunt of what they can be, what him and Barron can be when they're on the field together.
Yeah.
But I mean, TJ Parker's a hammer. Peter Woods, I don't know how he can play every position on the defensive line and play them all as like the best guy on that team, but he's doing it. I still think that starting four, meaningful step up for me for Clemson as a whole. That's probably not quite what Miami is, but
I hate that you're using the word meaningful. Like, I could see if you just said, I think Clemson gets the edge. The fact that you're saying meaningful, insane to me. I want to add one more thing on
yeah.
Simeon Barrow real quick, and that is I think he's taken some massive strides stopping the run. I think going into 2024, they were like, all right, he's a pass rush specialist on the inside. I kind of expected CJ Clark and maybe Marley Cook to play a little bit more because of what they could do against the run. Dill, Simeon Barrow's proven to be a 3-down interior defensive
Do you
lineman.
want to see Simeon Barrow be able to eat up a few more snaps than what it feels like he's eating up right now? Because it feels like he's not on the field as much as I'd like to see him.
Well, I think they're working him in. I think he's played, and I would have to look at the snap counts, but I do think he's played significantly more against teams like Virginia Tech and Cal than he did to
Okay.
start the season. I'll look at the snap counts. Maybe we can circle back to that. They'll go to the linebacker room. I think this one's pretty obvious for me, specifically in 2024 so far, and that's Clemson. Francisco Mauigoa, look, we all know what this kid can do. I would argue that he was the best linebacker, one of the best linebackers. I probably wouldn't say best, but one of the best linebackers in the ACC last year. Decided to forego the NFL, come back for another year. 21.6% missed tackle rate, only 9 run stops on the year. Look, I'm not like selling stock on Kiko here because I think he's a very good linebacker. There's a large sample size telling me he's a good linebacker. Hasn't necessarily played his best football. You look at Clemson. I think Barry Carter the last 2 games has had his 2 best games, and Wade Wood has. I think you're looking at one of the most underrated linebackers in the country with Wade Wood as. And Dabo Swinney was singing his praises before the season. You kind of understand why. I'm going Clemson at the linebacker room. Where are you going here?
Yep, and it's Clemson, and it's for the simple fact you need more out of your hammer and Francisco. He has to play better football for this Miami team. Again, last 2 games, I don't think have been good enough. And you look, I mean, Barrett Carter's playing as well as you'd want to see a linebacker play. Wade Woodez is doing his thing, but I think the big separator is the fact that Mauigoa is probably not playing up to his level or up to his standard.
And now, one thing I'll add is Wesley Bassane has been playing some dang
And
good
well,
football.
that's the frustrating part because I look, that's a really good tandem if Mauigoa kind of
And he
finds his
will.
level.
I think he will. Like it was really 2. It was Virginia Tech Cal, not great games, specifically the Virginia Tech game, and we're so used to him being just like so freaking good all of last year. I'm pretty confident that he'll. Both of these linebacker rooms get after the quarterback, by the way, at an elite level. Like these are probably 2 top 10 linebacker rooms in terms of rushing the quarterback. Barry Carter, Kiko, they both do it at a phenomenal level. Sounds like both the boys are going Clemson here. Secondary, again, probably pretty easy right now. Clemson secondary has been freaking awesome. And the Avian Terrell is the best cornerback in the ACC. And I know Florida State fans, hopefully they ain't listening at minute 17 here. Avian Terrell is the guy. Now, the story for Clemson is the emergence of Jaden Lucas on the other side, who's playing very good football, and RJ Mickens at the safety spot. And then you look at Miami and say, I'm okay with the personnel. It was a question mark coming in. Like we would have said Clemson before the season. We're saying Clemson now. They've been dealing with some injuries, but I think more importantly, they're just dealing with either some young talent, like some true freshman cornerbacks, or some transfer cornerbacks and just transfer pieces in general. Like it's a relatively new group working together. And so you're seeing some busts and coverages. I expect this unit to get better, but I don't think you can make an argument that they're close to Clemson right now because Clemson's secondary playing like one of the best groups in the country.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I mean, that's obviously been an issue, and it's not like a down-to-down issue, which is kind of the frustrating thing.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, big plays really, really matter, and they need to find a way to stop letting it happen, especially when they start seeing better football teams. Because Cal, Virginia Tech aren't really the teams you want to see be able to hit 3, 4, 5, 6 big plays that kind of change games.
All right, let's get to it. Hopefully, people are still watching at 18 minutes. Still, Clemson, Miami. They're playing neutral site tomorrow. Who you taking?
I'm going to take Clemson, and I'll say the fundamental reason probably is I think Miami for the most part I'd probably take in a certain sense, but I think the defensive secondary for Miami is the biggest hole in either of these teams. That's probably where my biggest concern is. Now, I have some concerns, frankly, that Miami's defensive line will be a bit too much for this Clemson team because, again, we've seen this Clemson team against good defensive lines have some really, really bad moments where they're not putting that team in a particularly competitive position. And that's going back to last year. But that's pretty much the same unit. So I think you can kind of make that comparison. So that's probably my question. But right now, this Clemson secondary, or Miami secondary, I should say, is not playing at a level that'll consistently beat these really good teams. They need to find a new level, if you will, if they're going to be a championship contender.
I'm gonna go Miami. And I understand where you're coming from here. And I'll say this 4 weeks ago, if you were to ask me who's winning even before the season, I picked Miami to win the ACC. And then 4 weeks ago, I'd have said, all right, Miami, like I think they're the clear favorite to win the ACC. Clemson's roaring back in the standings for me. But at the end of the day, I want to see Cade do it against a Miami Hurricanes caliber defense. Like, you've seen Cade play really, really good football, but what's the best defense that they've seen? Like, you would probably point to NC State, but NC State's been a disaster in 2024. I've seen Cam Ward do it against what I think are better. I think Cal has a really good defense. He went on the road and beat Florida, played really well. So I'm going to go Miami because I have a little bit more trust in the quarterback position right now. And again, we went back and forth. Like, it's going to be a close match. This is going to be a very good, fun football game. I really hope we get to see it. But right now, you look at Cam Ward and say, I trust him a little bit more than K Klubnik.
That's another huge differentiator because I agree. Cam Ward's playing some absolute nails football in the big moments. And again, they haven't probably had the challenge of a Georgia defense yet. But when they've needed him to play elite, he's played elite. I don't know that you can totally say the same for Cade because they needed him to play great with his hair on fire in that Georgia game, and I'm not 100% sure they got that.
Yeah, and if K Klubnik goes on the road to Virginia Tech and dices him up and continues to look the way that he's looked against,
I almost want to see them be down in the second half and see what he does then, because that to me is when you've seen not the best version of Cade Klubnik. Now, I don't know that Clemson's going to find themselves in those positions because they're playing great defense, but I wouldn't mind seeing it.
And you look at Cam Ward and say, you've seen this team have their back against the wall. You've seen Cam Ward have his back against the wall. You saw him play horrible. You've seen a horrible half of football from Cam Ward a couple different times, and storms back in the fourth quarter. I think that gives Miami Hurricane fans a lot of confidence. Like, you're never out of a football game when you got Cam Ward slinging the pill. I'm on Miami. You're on Clemson. I hope we get to see this football game. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.